Coaches and members of the school board, I am glad that we are here meeting today to talk about managing stresses of our student athletes because it has become a major intercollegiate athletic issue. Um, Thank you for coming. My name is Zachary Perez, and I hope this PowerPoint, this presentation kind of opens our eyes to the amount of stress student athletes go through day in and day out in their daily lives. So we're going to start off with our introduction. We start by saying that stress is put upon student athletes, and it needs to be examined more. The reason why is because constant examination will allow solutions to arise, and that'll help us assist with the student athlete coping with their stresses. The three types of student athlete stress that we're going to talk about today is academic stress, performance stress, and external stress. Each of them kind of get categorized and explained in a different manner, and we'll go over that shortly. In terms of faith, values, and beliefs relating to this topic, I entirely believe that encountering stress is beneficial, but too much stress can kind of affect a person emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So with that being said, I think learning to overcome stress is a significant part of our life because outside of sports and outside of academics, it carries on to the real world, and I think we need to kind of learn how to do or manage that moving forward. The way we get through that is through constant faith, constant prayer that, God will give us the strength to handle that stress that is put forth in our lives, and He puts it there for a reason. So we got to get through as a group, we got to get through as individuals, and, push ourselves forward in the right direction. We start with academic stresses. Student athletes are actually required to take on a full academic load that requires 12 units of that of a regular student while also playing sports. Sports at all levels sometimes demand the same amount of hours and travel time as a full-time job. I know, for example, the women's basketball team at Cypress College practices for 3 hours. That's just practice time. That means they go and lift after for another hour. That's 4 hours. And then they're required to do an hour study hall, which is 5 hours. And you put that throughout the week, that's equivalent to almost a full-time job that many other students kind of don't have to take. With that being said, these time constraints potentially hinder these athletes' ability to get the necessary resources that they need to succeed in their classes. Studies have shown that time constraints and physical and emotional strain, which can be achieved through practice because it's so demanding, were significant internal challenges that affect an academic performance of a student athlete. With that being said, it's important that we incorporate academic support program in each school at every level. This is my solution to it. I'm talking about the junior college level, Division II, Division III, and Division I levels. The reason we want to do this is we want to ensure that our student athletes have eligibility in order to perform, in their respective sports while also attaining an education. Research supports that student athletes utilize academic support systems and prefer them when they're with their athletic departments. Obviously, every school has resources like tutors, library, librarians, and all that. But when it comes to student athlete comfortability, it has to do with their athletic department they're more comfortable with their athletic department rather than just the regular school. And I really believe that these academic support systems or programs should assist student athletes with advising, counseling, maintaining eligibility, and just later on decision making in terms of their career. That's a big thing that I think we got to prepare student athletes for moving forward. We kind of find a lot of student athletes after they're done with their sport don't know really what they're doing. So giving them that assistance and that guidance after sports is something that we can all do moving forward. Now, the issue with these academic support systems or programs is that there are currently many controversies, especially at the Division I level, of athletic departments being corrupt when it comes to student athlete academics. It's a constant issue to keep your star players eligible, and I think there's a simple solution to that. My solution is we make every academic support program available to those who guarantee and sign a contract that they will be in school for 4 years or longer. And the reason being is because it takes approximately 4 years to attain your degree. If a student wants to redshirt, he has 5 years to attain his degree. My only exception would be for the sport of basketball because they have the one and done policy. Now, for basketball, students have to sign a contract that says 5 years. Or I'm sorry, not 5 years, 3 years. 3-year contract because a degree can be attained in 3 years. Obviously, we run through numbers, and one of the numbers that came across me in the sport of basketball is only 2% of Division I athletes make it to the pro level. With that being said, I know we all have dreams of being a NBA player, MLB player, or whatever it is professionally in our respective sport, but not everybody can. And preparing those who can't in a different route, whether it be academically or in another sense, we got to do it. We got to figure out what we can do for our student athletes to help them outside of the school environment. So, that is the academic side of things. Now we're going to move on to performance stresses. This is another stress that student athletes constantly have to deal with. Young men and women are basically demanded to win games so that coaches can either develop a high profile. We see this at the community college level, Division II level, Division III level, just so we can move up and build our status as coaches, and also just for coaches to keep their collegiate jobs. Unfortunately, especially at the Division I level, a lot of things are about winning and losing. If you're not winning, you're not keeping fans happy. Athletic directors are kind of pushed to make a decision that they might not entirely want to make. So with that being said, a lot of collegiate levels, D1 down, adopt a win-at-all-cost mentality. And that's really bad. It causes stress both upon coaches and on players. And stress levels become extremely high. And a study showed when performance goals in sports and school are at the same time, they are positively associated with each other. And that starts to bring about school-related pessimism. So when you're not doing well in sports, you're not doing well in school. And we cannot have that. We got to have academics first, school second. And that's something that student athletes are kind of fighting with right now. Now, as we move on to the next slide, a major performance stress example that I came across that I want to share with you guys was in 2013. Rutgers University head men's basketball coach, Mike Rice. He was accused and found guilty for physical and emotional abuse of his players. For those of you that don't know, he came from Robert Morris University, where he had a 70% winning percentage and an 80% conference winning percentage, which is fairly high. Goes to Rutgers, first 2 years rough, 40% winning percentage, and I think that all the stress and everything kind of got to his head. And in a post-interview, he said that he thought his punishments and his actions were necessary to get his team tougher. And the result of that was it pushed student athletes to a sense of burnout. They either transfer schools, losing a year of eligibility, or even love for the game. And when sports burnout happens, like we talked about before, it has a direct correlation with school burnout. So all these student athletes probably either lost their chance, lost the love, or lost their love for academics. And we can't have that. That's all built upon the idea of a coach having stress issues and putting stress upon his players. And that's not something that we want, and we got to take into account. Additional stress performance issues. In a study, we kind of figured out that student athletes who strive for success at high-level sports and and also pursue a secondary education at the same time are very, 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 very prone to school and sport burnout. Um, the numbers are actually extremely higher for student athlete school burnout than just a regular student. Um, and the issue is that some athletes at every level believe that their sport is basically their college opportunity. Um, and this puts extreme pressure upon athletes, uh, put upon themselves to maintain their scholarships, to get their school paid for because that might be their ticket, or to perform at their expected levels, whether it's their expected levels, their parents' expected levels, or their friends' expected levels. And the result of that is basically these kids are becoming athletes first and students second, and that's not what we want. So my solution to this was basically we go back again to that academic support program. And within that academic support program, we have coaches set up weekly coach and athlete relationship meetings. And because it is basically an important detriment to student athlete stress and motivation levels, we found that research indicates that there's a significant relationship between a coach's technical expertise and emotion stability and interest in employment and the motivation of the student athletes. So if we can get coaches to build relationships and push their student athletes, I think it's something that will relieve the stress of them and kind of push them towards the right direction in academics. In addition, we found that high ratings of coach likability were related to lower levels of perceived stress. And within academic support programs, we have already seen many opportunities with mental health counseling and sports psychology and all this great stuff that's coming about. I think if we add a coaching dimension into that sports program, but we got to have coaches on board. Coaches have that ability to justify the importance of academics on their student athletes. So that is something that I would like to have coaches kind of get together and formulate to take a little bit of stress off performances and guide student athletes toward academics first, and then the performance side of things will come second, and things will get better as they move forward. The last thing we're going to talk about is external stresses. Athletes, for those of you that know, college is a big step in life. You got to stay away from home. Athletes have a significant difficulty adjusting to their school of choice away from home. And that's challenging for any student, whether you're moving 20 miles away, or whether you're moving across the country, or whether you're moving as an international student. And a lot of students struggle to integrate themselves into a new culture, whether it's team environment, school environment, or anything they find themselves into. And obviously, we talked about international students. That's a major problem they deal with as well. They had to quickly learn how to manage their language barriers, their administrative issues, and basically coaches that may not have any sensitivity to what they're going through and the changes that they have to go through. With that being said, we found that most of the positive experiences for not only international kids, but national kids involved on the court performance or interacting with teammates and their coaches. And that goes back again to, illustrating that coaches should attempt to have a positive team atmosphere and a family-oriented or sympathetic, something family-oriented or sympathetic to student athletes' needs. Because most of the time, sports are, student athletes' time to relieve their external stresses. So I think it's important for coaches to kind of develop a philosophy, develop a relationship with guys that is positive, so it relieves some of that external stress and see where they're coming from. My external stress solutions, once again, we're going to come back to that academic support program for student athletes. We would like ideally to have someone there for personal and emotional issues in a way that they can effectively communicate with faculty, like we talked about before. Student athletes are way more comfortable talking to faculty in their athletic department opposed to those outside their athletic department. None of these kids are going to go to a therapist. I mean, as good as it sounds, they either don't have the money for it or they're just not comfortable with it. So if we can get people into this athletic program that are willing to listen, that are willing to help these student athletes, I think it'll go a long way in turning around their external stress along with their academic stress and their performance stresses. With that being said, I want this student athlete support program to have a solid place for athletes to build connections with other student athletes as well. I think it's important for a program or an athletic program as a whole to go out and support every other sport. With that being said, you'd build connections with other sports, you'd build friends, you build relationships, and that's something that, like we talked about before, if you're a new college student integrating yourself into a new environment, you want to find friends, you want to find people you're comfortable with, and you want to kind of just enjoy that college life, not worry about stressing about, how do I look to these people or anything like that. Outside of this academic support system, I would like coaches and counselors to encourage students to join outside clubs or programs. This allows them to develop outside connections and outside hobbies that may be good for self-relief. In my personal experience, I joined an ultimate frisbee club outside of my respective sport of basketball. When things weren't going well for basketball, I'd love going back out with, different friends and throwing a frisbee around and competing in that sense. And it was just another way to get away from basketball. And it made my college experience so much better. And if you interview with other coaches or other students that do this, you find that they find relief in things like golf or whether it be tennis or anything like that. And they find other connections and other relationships that they can build upon in that sense. So, I'm going to leave you guys with this. My concluding statements. Stress is a recurring issue that student athletes constantly come across throughout the country at all levels. Division I, Division II, Division III, and community college. So it's important for us to offer solutions and try to help minimize this stress as much as possible. And I think the main way that we can do that is to start developing academic support systems at all levels. Make it a requirement. Make it a college requirement for student athletes because they're the ones that I feel like need it the most. And like I said before, we have to make it a contract thing. We have to make it a 4-year deal or a 3-year deal. So student athletes take this program seriously and take the benefits very seriously. Outside of that, we need to make coaches aware of their influence. They have a big influence on student athlete stresses, and it's a major step in limiting the amount of stress that kids go under academically, externally, and internally. So with that being said, I hope that these academic support systems begin to grow throughout the country in your local community, and you coaches here today can kind of grasp what I've given you, and kind of run with it and develop a philosophy that's relatable to your kids and makes them more comfortable. And let's just be the great coaches and the great mentors we can be. Thank you guys.